Oral Health Show with Dr. Norm Ickard on the Health Channel on localwebradio.fm.
Buying or selling a home on the Semiahmoo Peninsula? Catch up on local market conditions on This Week in Real Estate with Lance and Connie Marples from Sutton West Coast Realty on localwebradio.fm.
Now back to the Gordie Hogg Show.
All right, we're back with Gordie Hogg. And now, Gordie, I know you have a long history of serving your community, and you're very passionate about it. From White Rock Elementary through, all the service that you've done over the years. It's remarkable, and it's very unique. So let me ask you this question. I know you've been involved in politics over the years. Now, what led you to get involved in politics? And, was there a certain event or a person that inspired you?
Well, I think as we discussed a little earlier, certainly the issue with my mother saying to me that she really hoped she'd raised me as the kind of person who wouldn't complain about things but would get involved and try and make a difference. I guess certainly that was pivotal for me. I think that as well the issues of knowing that my father, who was one of the first family physicians in the community, and the work that he did, and knowing actually he grew up in southern Saskatchewan, in the prairies of Western Canada. Certainly a lot of some of the teachers I had were pretty instrumental in that. In high school, I had one of my high school basketball coaches, Ed Carlin. Actually, when I graduated from high school, I was a bricklayer's helper, which I'd worked at every summer. And I really liked being a bricklayer's helper. And I graduated with a bachelor's degree from UBC. And Ed Carlin said, "Well, I saw a sign about probation officers. Maybe you should consider doing that." And I had no idea what a probation officer was, but I ended up applying, and I was eventually accepted. I heard later there were something like 700 or 800 applicants, and
oh wow,
they narrowed it down to 12 of us. And I can remember the interview, or the first interview, where they said, "Well, if we give you this job, would you get a haircut and wear a shirt and tie?" I found out later I was the only one that didn't wear a shirt and tie to the interview, and I was one of those more difficult people. I guess I said, "Well, I'd be happy to get a haircut and wear a shirt and tie if you could tell me how that would make me more effective in the job." And so we had a bit of, and eventually they hired me, and I had a lot of good experiences working with young. So I was a youth probation officer. I worked with young people across the area. Got to eventually was riding with the RCMP on Friday and Saturday nights in a floater car, and so if there were youth gang issues or domestic violence, we went to those, and I was the one that got out of the car to attend those because I wasn't in uniform, and sometimes uniforms escalated rather than de-escalated issues. So that was a great experience. I went from there to becoming the warden of our largest youth custody center in the province, and I was doing that while I was on city council and eventually while I was mayor. So I got to work lots of hours in those days doing two fairly significant jobs. So when I ran provincially and they said, "Oh, you're going to maybe have to work 50 or 60 hours a week," I said, "Are you kidding? Is that all? That's a nice break." So it's been a great community to grow up in, and lots of sense of community and growth as a community. It many ways the hospital auxiliary. I can remember Dad went back and forth to Victoria on a few occasions to help negotiate to get a hospital in our community. And he used to drive to New Westminster, cross the Patella Bridge every morning. So he was gone before we ever got up in the morning. And then he would be back home at 6 o'clock at night because he did his rounds in the hospital in the morning. And then he had his office hours in the afternoon, and then got home at 6 o'clock at night. And then he went out on house calls. So it was a busy life. And I think that my two sisters and my brother and I all grew up with that type of activity and that sort of, I guess, prairie mentality where you look after each other and you get involved in your community and you do things. And Mom and Dad were involved in all kinds of things. Mom was a charter member of the hospital auxiliary, which actually worked hard and all those traditional ways of baking and knitting and selling things to raise money to actually get a hospital built in our community. And
you were just saying that your dad was pretty instrumental in that as well, getting the hospital there, right?
That's right, yeah. And I guess it might have been a little bit self-serving for him. He wouldn't have to drive to Westminster anymore. But yeah, he was.
It really sounds more like that your family's priorities have always been serving the community and serving the greater good, and being involved and making sure that there's connection and participation, and not just with your family, but really the greater community. Does that sound like? Am I on the right track there?
Well, I don't think we ever thought of it that way, or probably we never even looked at it in a conceptual or a theoretical sense. I think that's just what life was about, and I don't think we were terribly unique in that. I think growing up in the community back in those days, in the high school, I knew everybody in the high school. I mean, it was a small enough high school that you knew everybody.
Sure.
And like every Saturday, we were at our house. We were welcome to invite as many friends over as we wanted, and Mom cooked hamburgers, and everybody was involved and did things. So there was no sense that I was aware of any type of stratification or anybody was different or better. It was just we were all here, and so I don't. So as you describe it, you make it, you conceptualize it for me as though that was something that we were trying to do. Well, we weren't. I don't think I had no sense that we were trying to do anything. We were just. That's what life was about, and that was life in our community, and it was a neat life. My sister, I think my older sister, my sister Joan, when she was just 3.5 or almost 4, she used to walk from our house on Buena Vista, which is now Dr. Al Hogue Rotary Park, down to her kindergarten place on Columbia, which was probably 6 or 8 blocks, and she was like, I don't know, 2.5 feet tall or something, but so she used to walk there, and nobody ever thought anything of it. There's Jones walking off to kindergarten. You don't see that happening very much anymore.
Sure.
So it's just an example of how society has changed, and we've changed in a lot of good ways, and in some ways not as good ways. But I think that certainly the personal connectedness that we have with each other is a really important part of that, and we have to find ways and places to ensure that we still communicate, that we communicate with each other, that we don't allow that social isolation or disconnectedness that was found in some of the polling and interviews that were done that saw us starting to silo and again breaking up around issues of age or income or culture. For us to be able to have that great sense of connectedness, which is what gives us life and gives us a sense of joy and increases our subjective sense of well-being and makes us more effective and better at everything that we want to do.
Yeah.
How do we look at that? How do we, so it goes back to that thing, that comment I started with was, how do we take care of each other? What are the things that we take care of each other? Because certainly if you listen to the advertisements on television and other places, the marketers would have us believe that if you just buy their product, somehow we'll be happy. Or if you listen, it's not happening apparently. Or the Hollywood mentality that if you're just pretty and good looking and that you're going to be happy. Or if you listen to some politicians, if you just vote for me, you're going to be happy. Well, all of the research and the practical experience tell us that none of that is true.
And Gordie, it's been so remarkable talking to you today, and hearing about that. It's not really about the shallowness or the surface, but really about the depth of the character of yourself and your family and the founding principles and the love you have for this community. So it's been absolutely great talking to you. Next week on the next episode, we're going to dig right into some of the early memories of growing up in White Rock. Now, for our listeners, if you need to reach Gordie, you can do so on his website, and that's located at www.gordonhoguemla.bc.ca, or you can call his office at 604-542-3930. Well, Gordie, for myself, for the listeners, thanks so much for the conversation today.
Oh, I've enjoyed it very much. Thank you for taking me down memory lane.
Thanks for listening. If you have an interesting story about growing up on the peninsula, please share it with us on our Facebook page at www.facebook.com/LWR Peninsula.
Local stories, local voices. We're localwebradio.fm.
This episode is a production of Jam Media. For information on hosting your own web radio show, visit jammedia.com. That's www.jambmedia.com.
The opinions expressed by our guest and host on localwebradio.fm do not necessarily reflect the views of Jam Media or its owners. No expressed or implied opinions of any product or service should be considered an endorsement or recommendation of any kind by Jam Media or its owners.